Good morning, here we are today at Richard's charity event up in Market Harborough in Leicester. There's
You can't
Kate
see
over
me.
there, you can't see her, she's waving at us. Just a quick video for the guys on the forum and overseas particularly, to give you some idea of what it's like to be here today. We've got lots of people coming. Richard's here and I want to have a quick chat with him. A couple of questions, Richard.
Yeah.
About your favourite tool, if you'd like to explain that for us.
Right, everybody always asks me what's my favourite tool in my collection, and people probably find it a bit odd. It's a fairly plain and simple plough plane, late 19th century plough plane. Nothing exceptional about it really, much at all, except it belonged to my grandfather. When I started my apprenticeship, I was given a tool chest that belonged to my grandfather, and most of the tools in it were of no use to me as a modern joiner at all. But after a year or so, I started to get interested in what was in the chest, and this plough was laying in the bottom of the chest, but it had been separated, the fence and stems had been separated from the body. And I found the fence and stems first, and I didn't understand what this curious tool was for at the time, because it didn't make any sense as to what its use could be, whether it was some sort of gauge or whatever. And then I found the body of the plane and started to look at the two pieces and thought, wait a minute, they look like they fit together. Put the two together and realised that they belonged to each other, but still didn't really know what the tool was for. And it was by trying to find out what this plough plane was for, started my whole interest in tools completely. So this is definitely still my favourite tool.
And obviously, you know, being your father's, it's
Grandfather's,
grandfather.
Yeah.
So it's one that you use very often. And during all the work that you do, and obviously you've got the joinery here and everything, what's a tip that you'd give out there to everybody watching today?
Well, not so much a tip that I've learned through the joinery, but something that I'm quite passionate about is sash filisters, and I think they're a very underrated tool. Everybody associates a sash filister with window making, and they probably were originally, well almost certainly were, first created to create accurate rebates in the sort of mid to late 18th century for sash window making. But I think joiners realised that they were probably capable of a lot more than that, and I think they did used to use them on a regular basis for other things other than sash windows. For cutting any rebate, they're very, very efficient, and the thing I like about them is that when you use them, you're working on the off side of the timber, so the fence is on this side of the timber, and when you cut a rebate, the wood is trapped between the fence and here, and there is no danger of you slowly creeping off the edge of the rebate because it's trapped in place. So you get a nice crisp 90-degree line down there, as opposed to a normal rebate plane or a moving filister that you have to really concentrate on keeping pushed tight up against the fence. The other thing, the theory I've got is that I think they possibly used a sash filister for thicknessing and regularising timber. Because if you cut a small rebate, say I wanted to thin this board down to 3/4 of an inch, if you create a shallow rebate there, turn it round and do the same on the other edge, you have regularised the stock to 3/4 of an inch. Now, you can then place that on your bench and plane that down with a jack plane and a tri-plane. But the big difference is when you're working down on the bench, rather than trying to look at a gauge line, which is what everybody does these days, you've got a much clearer indication of how far you've got to go down. You're not trying to peer around the edge to see where your gauge line is. And I think they use sash filisters for thicknessing a lot. They definitely used it for thicknessing floorboards. We can see this in historical buildings, because at this stage they would cut the groove here, and then rather than plane the whole board down to that thickness, they would only take a jack plane and plane across the floorboard to take it down to a level area wherever it fitted over a joist. This was obviously labour saving, but it also kept the board as thick as possible for strength. But I think they took it a step further and realised they could use this for thickness in any stock boards that they were trying to use.
Because I've seen that with bevel planes, where you put a bevel on two sides of a joint of an edge of the board, and then you plane using a jointer to the low level of the bevel, and when you see the bevel disappear, so it's a similar principle. You've actually, we can take the camera over to show the just a bit primitive here, but talking about sash filisters, we've got quite a selection here. And these are all 18th century, I believe.
The top row are all sash filisters, and they are all 18th century.
That's an amazing array of planes we've got there.
The lower section are all 18th century plough planes.
And these are all plough planes down here. And then some of the other things we've got on display today that Richard's kindly provided.
Over the years, I've always concentrated mainly on things that weren't moulding planes. So you've got a number of panel raisers at the top here on the top shelf, and then lower down here you've got things like moving filisters and more panel raisers and large moulding planes, bench style moulding planes, and a few dado planes. And then these over here are moulding planes, but they're all very early, fairly important early London made.
So you've obviously got some Robert Wooding in there.
There's a few Robert Woodings in there, John Davenports, and a lot of the famous early makers.
That's John Davenport is the one that I was actually looking for, and it's is it your Purdue is there as well? I take it.
There's a couple of Purdues in here. I haven't got a really good clean Purdue, but there are a couple in there somewhere. Yeah.
That and they're all obviously under the sign of the three planes. Which we've talked about.
Yeah.
And across the other way we've got a display. This young lady's doing a display
by Fiona of exceptional fretwork.
It's an amazing quality.
Yeah, not your usual fretwork.
Three-dimensional. That's astounding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Astounding work.
There are a few other early tools just here. Those of you interested in sash window making, we've got a couple of sash doweling boxes.
Oh yeah, this is obviously some people in America like Amy and various other people are
interested in
sash
This one's quite sophisticated, with a screw adjuster for the height and quite a beautifully made. Whereas this, although still quite well made, is a lot cruder. It was probably height adjusted by tapping wedges in top and bottom to get it to the correct height. And then you put packers in the side here for different widths of bars. But they're both essentially for the same job.
And I see a slick there as for...
This is one of the earliest chisels you'll probably ever see, English chisels. It was made by Samuel Freeth, and it's probably 17th century, probably dating to about 1680 to 1690.
And that's the one you made the handle for?
I made a handle for
period.
it. I don't know whether it's in the period style, but it's just something I put together just to put a handle on it.
It's quite a stunning. You can get some detail on that. That's beautifully made, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got some old braces I see there from.
This is a very early English brace. Something you very, very rarely see is the very earliest button pad braces were made of iron as opposed to brass. And this is by a chap called John Riley of Birmingham, and this probably dates to about 1770.
That's stunningly beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. And it's so simple and
lovely little decorations on here which you don't see on the later braces.
Beautiful, and then we've got
another
some
recently. Oh, sorry.
The gauges here.
These are sash window making tools. Well, I think they are. They're cut out of the solid. The stock doesn't move, so they're actually just cut from one solid lump of timber. And if you look carefully on the end here, you'll see how much these have actually been used. They've had an incredible amount of wear on the end. This is end grain. Yeah. They've got 4 pins in. I think they were actually used for marking the stiles and rails of sash windows, and the measurements are, you've got the distance from the edge of the sash to the edge of the mould, the width of the mortise, this is the overall width of the stock, but what puzzled me was the 4th pin for a long time, but then I realised that the meeting rails on sash windows are 1/4 inch wider than all the other components, so I think this is for what the 4th pin was for marking the overall width of a meeting rail. And my belief is that 18th century joiners, these are probably 18th century, rather than just marking the mortise and tenons out, they mark the full length of the rails and stiles. This cut through the fibres, cut through any difficult grain knots or whatever, so when they use the sash finish and the moulding plane to mould the bars and the rails and stiles, they'd already cut a clean, crisp line the whole length of the timber.
Gotcha.
But this is all theory, we don't know, but I can't think of any other use for them. They were both found in the same chest. One is for 1 3/4 stock and the other one's for 1 1/2 stock, which are the 2 common sizes for sash material, so it's highly likely they were used for that purpose.
And what else do we have on this? A couple of spoke shaves as well?
Yeah, a couple of early draw knives, they're both 18th century. Interesting old square that's probably 18th century with a bone stock rather than steel.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then finally, just before we go, we've got today's auction. We had started out with the wooding plane, which I think everybody's seen, and we've in Ollie's workshop got the Ollie's beautiful rebate, and we've got the mallet, the Marples mallet, both got some pretty good bidding on, and I think we had some additional...
Bill Carter has kindly brought some additional items that we think we probably better auction off. There's a lovely big...
it's an astounding joint.
Sounding sort of steel sort of shooting plane, I perhaps call it, with a steel mouth, reinforced mouth.
Quite understand exactly how big that thing
is. Yeah,
is.
it is huge. Beautiful ash bow saw here, and a lovely U-log with every mark that Bill's ever had made up in the end.
There's every stamp that Bill's ever had, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah.
He's hiding in the background over here.
And the saw. The saw
is also marked.
Got Bill's marks on, as has the plane. I think, is it, Bill? If you put some of your... Yes, the marks are all in the back of the plane.
Oh, there's one
Bill's
after
stamps.
the other down the back. That's quite...
Yeah. But we've got to decide quite how we're going to auction these off, because we've only just received them and we want to do something a bit special with them.
Yeah, this is what happens when you get Bill Carter comes and don't do a few giveaways, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah.
Or was it the missus trying to clear your shed out? Bill's just setting up over here, so we'll catch up with you. We'll catch up with you in a minute.
Wait till you see what's outside.
No, we don't want to see what's outside. Okay, well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much,
All
Richard,
right,
for
thank
spending
you,
some
Jimmy.
time early on in the day. We'll obviously get some pictures today, but we appreciate this for people who can't be here. Cheers, mate.
All right, thank you.